In this one, I'll be speaking about the Canadian military and their quote-unquote wellness checks going door to door and their training exercises going from May 3rd to 5th in the Huron and Bruce Counties, and it will also be performed in Mattawa and North Bay. And I'll be talking about the biodigitalization agenda and where all this stuff is leading. So Canadian military come to the area for a training exercise May 3rd to 5th, as I said. They're headquartered in Blythe, which will be at the Community Center, Campground, and Ball Diamonds, along with the West Cast Community Complex in Wingham. Equipment will begin arriving in late April, and the exercise will involve other Huron and Bruce County communities as well. This is being done to create a more challenging, realistic training exercise, and will see soldiers conducting fire training, wellness checks, simulated search and rescue operations, cooling center establishment, as well as other related activities. All measures are being taken to ensure minimum inconvenience to those in the area. Members of the public are asked to take extra caution if approaching military vehicles, and troops are thanked in advance for their understanding and cooperation. Then questions can be directed to 31 Canadian Brigade Group Public Affairs Officer, Lieutenant Paul Verhey, and his email is left there. And it mentions taking extra caution when approaching military and their vehicles, yet it says there is no reason for concern regarding this exercise. So, and it also mentions that Goderich residents will notice a military presence in town, and that on May 4th, they will be doing the door-to-door knocks in Goderich, which is Saturday. So why is it saying here that there's no reason for concern regarding this, and then it tells you to approach with caution? Those are definitely mixed messages right there for sure. And this, of course, leaves the information for the Group Public Affairs Officer, Lieutenant Paul Verhey, once again. However, fact of the matter is, I would want to be questioning the ones in command of 31 Canadian Brigade Group or the 4th Division of the Canadian military, which is exactly what this particular brigade is a part of. So this is the poster regarding the quote-unquote exercise, if you will, which is referred to as Trillium Venture. So here is Operation Trillium Venture on this website here. A little bit about it is spoken about, and of course this is an image from 2019, a previous training exercise in exercise Arrowhead Response in Woodstock 2019, but this particular link left me with the Owen Sound Times link here, which I will be reading to you. So they'll be coming to Bruce County May 3rd to 5th, as I said, and 800 Army reservists are expected in Bruce and Huron counties, and as well, they'll be going all over the place in Bruce Huron counties, not just in Goderich. And Major Paul Vickering of the Canadian Armed Forces, 31 territorial battalions based in London at Bruce County Council on Thursday, where he outlined the training exercise where he'll simulate where a simulated domestic scenario requiring real military response will take place. And it's part of the Trillium Venture exercise. Actually started in 2023, and the exercise Trillium Response was held in Toronto in January, where the leadership of the exercise worked through the scenario, developed their procedure, and came up with a plan, said Major Paul Pickering. And the exercise is to be held in Bruce and Huron counties, and like I said as well, North Bay. I'll be reading an article about that too eventually. And they will be confirming the capabilities of the territorial battalion group, and this is a composite group made up of our 12 units and 31 Canadian Brigade Group that come together for domestic operation. Pickering said the group had deployed in the past to deal with floods and forest fires, and this is something that will happen again, and we practice for it, which is why we do these exercises, if you say so. It's one thing to conduct training exercises, and then it's another to involve what we'll term civilians, for lack of better words here. I really don't like that term. And it says the scenario for May will simulate a 13-day heat wave with temperatures peaking above 40 degrees Celsius, and it'll include severe storm causing power outages and damage to infrastructure and homes. There will be the possibility of water shortages in some communities and an option to add wildfires to further escalate the exercise. Let's hope it's not too realistic, shall we? A number of tasks are planned for the participating reservists, including wellness checks, tree clearing, fire training, moving seniors from one location to another, an ATV search of the coastline, and a search and rescue exercise. Among Bruce County communities where participants will be located are Mildmay, Walkerton, Wyerton, Sauble Beach, and Lions Head. The exercise headquarters will be based in Blythe, with other Huron County communities involved, including Clinton, Hensall, Wingham, and Goderich. Yeah, so Blythe is where, at the community center, in which some of their headquarters, where the 31 Canadian Brigade Group will be stationed. And so there's 800 soldiers in the area, like I said, going to do anything of humanitarian assistance or aid to the civil power type of training. And like I said, it's 3 days. Pickering said that they'll still have to confirm with Emergency Management Ontario if there will be one emergency operations center or if there will be EOCs located in each of the 2 counties. EOC will be staffed by personnel from Bruce and Huron counties. Bruce County Community Emergency Management Coordinator Ray Lux said the county is planning to run an exercise prior to the weekend to build up to the need to call in the military. Huron Kinloss Mayor Don Murray, which I'll be talking about later in the video, said having the exercise locally means a lot to him. Having family members who have retired from the military, I think it is great to see our military coming into Bruce County and our small communities, said Murray. Big thumbs down to you, Murray. Pickering said they don't have a lot of military personnel working or stationed in Bruce and Huron County, so it's good to visit those areas. This is one of the reasons we chose to come to Bruce and Huron, is just to protect the citizen soldier, the reservist, up in these 2 counties, he said. Well, like I mentioned, 4th Canadian Division are pretty well stationed in northwestern Ontario, so this particular article kind of goes over some of the articles I already mentioned, so I don't want to sound like too much of a broken record, but it mentions here just something slightly off topic, but it mentions QR codes being implemented on a Quebec island, so that is Madeline Island in particular, and it actually is only mentioned for people to exit according to the video, and I'm not sure if this has actually been implemented or not as of yet. However, what I will say is this kind of discussion, at the very least, is something that is pretty well desensitizing to a police state, just very much like the military exercise in and of itself. But this all revolves around something called the Biodigital convergence, which is termed by Policy Horizons, which I will be speaking about a little bit later. However, the biodigital convergence is the amalgamation of what is digital and what is biological and blurring those lines. So essentially, a police state needs to come into place for that kind of agenda to come to fruition, and also a very tech-based society, if you will. And I will be adapting on what I mean by that, talking about the digital twin, the metaverse, and that sort of a thing. And as well, I'll be talking a little bit about the climate change BS in a little bit too, because what happens with this climate change thing, I will get to momentarily. Excuse me, sorry, I'm sort of all over the place. So the cooling center is going to be in Walkerton, and wellness checks are also in Mildmay and Walkerton, as well as in Lucknow and Kincardine. The latter with South Bruce OPP, so I guess the OPP are going to be in Kincardine accompanying the military with this. And so as well, other parts of Bruce County like Lions Head, Dyers Bay, and Sauble Beach will see the addition of Navy personnel and engineers as water search and rescue work is conducted. So with that being said, there's the JTF, the Joint Task Force, which I'll be talking about. There's 6 divisions of Joint Task Force Central, is what the commander of 4th Division is a part of, and Joint Task Force have the authority to bring in not just Canadian military, but also Navy and Air Force and other things like that. So, this is just sort of reiterating the previous article a little bit, but to talk about County Councillor Don Murray in particular, for one thing, he is part of what's called the Global Covenant of Mayors. Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. So they essentially work on different tasks that revolve around what they term climate change and different energy-related projects, if you will. So to read about who they are, for one thing, the co-chairs are Michael Bloomberg and Maro Sivkovic. Apologies for the pronunciation. This is a powerful and historic response to climate change from cities around the world. GCOM is the largest global alliance for the city climate leadership, built upon the commitment of over 12,500 cities and local governments. These cities hail from 6 continents and 144 countries. In total, they represent more than 1 billion people, with climate mitigation targets that are projected to reduce global emissions by 4.1 whatever in 2050, equivalent to 80% of US's blah, 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 blah. I don't need to go on any further because it's all just BS here, but they're working towards the goals of the Paris Agreement, if you will. And the Paris Climate Agreement is just some climate change nonsense, if you will. And just want to say on a side note here is that Pierre Poilievre's famous words are "axe the tax," which we see the freedom protesters using that slogan quite a bit, yet Pierre Poilievre signed on board the Paris Climate Agreement. So, just some of the other mayors here I just want to mention. Luc Charbonneau of Saguenay Shores commented the scenario, like talking about the military scenario, described as something that could happen if it ever does. He said he's reassured you folks will be there. Please, you're doing the exercise. He added the only negative as far as he was concerned was the fact Saguenay Shores won't be involved. Alright, again, thumbs down for you as well. And Milt McIver of Northern Bruce Peninsula asked how the communities will be notified. Pickering explained information will be released to the media. That's Major Paul Pickering. So, here, you have any questions or whatever? Well, everything will be explained through the media. Well, media, if I change the I to an E in media, media was a Greek sorceress who casted illusions, so that should be enough said right there. And going on about climate change, if you will, which this weather-related drill is, I guess, sort of simulating, I guess, because anytime there's some kind of quote-unquote natural disaster, everything is blamed on quote-unquote climate change. But what happens, if you will, is it's just an excuse for, like, when people talk about what's sprayed in the air and stuff like that, it's not just heavy metals, right? There are different kinds of sensors that end up being sprayed and put onto, or rather ingested by us, or sprayed onto us, and same with the plants, blades of grass, trees, and even animals. So this all has to do with what's called the Internet of Bodies, or as well, it all has to do with what they call twinning, which was started by NASA in the 1960s. So they want to create digital twins, if you will, and they want to twin everything down to a blade of grass so that they could have a twinned environment in the metaverse. And this is also where smart infrastructure comes into play. So we need to form ethics committees in order to have the smart infrastructure removed and to make sure this biodigitalization agenda does not come to fruition. So, and then with the idea of digital twins, in Japan they have something called cyber avatar capitalism, where imagine your cybernetic avatar going for a walk on the Amazon shopping mall, if you will, to pick up items. That's pretty much the kind of future that they want to create, essentially. So, if the military are on our side, which, I have nothing against the everyday soldier, and I don't have anything against the everyday police officer either, but fact of the matter is that these organizations and corporations are serving the interest of the corporation, in this case Canada, because Canada is a corporation that is registered through the U.S. Treasuries and Trades Commission at the Canadian Embassy in Washington, D.C. So essentially, while these systems and services were not really built for us, I understand that some people's hands might be tied, and people do have to work and live. So I don't think that the Canadian military or any Canadian police force is necessarily all filled with entirely bad people. However, the wool is pulled over their eyes just as much as the quote-unquote civilian, once again, really dislike that term, because I don't like the differentiation between the everyday person and somebody in the military or police, whatever, right? So what I'm saying here is that while these systems are not built for us, there are some good people involved, and information is seriously compartmentalized to the point where the privates and the reserves in the military don't know as much as, say, the lieutenant colonel or whoever, right? And so everything is done on a need-to-know basis, as they'd probably put it. And this is doing the world a whole lot of damage because you're really just using good people to do bad things when these good people think they're doing good things. And essentially it just becomes like a call to the blind leading the blind, no different than a Masonic lodge. Anyway, I'm going to read little bits and pieces of this article here. A Trillium Venture Exercise is conducted by 31 Canadian Brigade Group, which I'll be looking into, and they simulate a heat scenario, like I said, and I already explained the BS of climate change to you. And while they're headquartered in Blythe Community Center, as I said, they'll cover approximately 250 kilometers from southern Huron County to Lions Head in Bruce County, which is in the north. And Lieutenant Colonel Chris Vandenberg, which I believe is shown in this picture here. Lieutenant Colonel Chris Vandenberg is expected at a news conference April 20th in Blythe that people can expect to see reservists in communities throughout the region, with the largest concentration in Blythe at the battalion headquarters. And people will be able to interact with the reservists and tour the portable headquarters in Blythe. I encourage anybody with interest to come on out and see what it is that we're doing. Okay, so why were we told to approach with caution then? Like, you see all this double messaging, right? It's kind of ridiculous with what the media, aka Greek sources who, cast illusions, what they're doing as well. And that comes right from the Godrich paper as well. More specifics about the locations are expected to be released closer to the date of the exercise. I'd also want to know what kind of questions they're going around to go ask these people as they're going around to people's residences. Lieutenant Colonel here, he said that the exercise will have reservist training for tasks that would potentially be doing in real extreme heat scenario, including firefighting, all-terrain vehicle, and watercraft training. Simulated search and rescue, wellness checks that will involve knocking on doors, simulated long-term care home evacuations, and dealing with road obstructions and power outages. And as well, the exercise has seen military coordinate with local municipalities, police, fire departments, and emergency medical services. Emergency Preparedness Ontario will establish an emergency operations center in Wingham during the exercises. And Major Adrian Daraniowski said military exercises rotate through different areas, and the coordination with the involved communities result in those regions being the most prepared for domestic operations. And from a messaging perspective, when we leave this exercise May 5th, there will be no region in Ontario more prepared for a domestic operation because of the networking that's happened. Yeah, whatever you say. And so, yeah, that concludes this article here. Time to move forward. So I'm going to talk about something called CamSafe, which was installed in the town of Godrich here. It says on Friday, April 19th, Huron County OPP was joined by Mayor Trevor Bazinet and Deputy Mayor Leah Noel, Janice Hallahan, CAO, and Michaela Johnson, CEMC, Accessibility and Health and Safety Manager Lynn Beauty, Godrich BIA, and Colin Carmichael, Huron Chamber of Commerce, in a walk of the downtown core to demonstrate community policing through partnerships and introduce CamSafe to our businesses community. CamSafe is a free volunteer CCTV and security video registry aimed at keeping our community safe and assisting police solve crime. Register your home or business today, if you say so, once again. So, talking about OPP CamSafe program in Goderich are Goderich CEO Janice Helen, yeah, all the same people that I had just mentioned as well. And then, of course, the people unmentioned in the picture before are Constable Jamie Stanley, Constable Craig Solidin, and Constable Craig Solidin, the Community Safety Officer. So, and this photo is courtesy of Huron County OPP. All thanks, guys. So, here is CamSafe, right? It basically mentions here that it's a CCTV security video registry aimed at keeping communities safe, helping police solve crime. Said think of it like Neighborhood Watch 2.0. I think about it like Minority Report personally. And the program is set up to be a registry of anyone who owns security camera devices, CCTV systems, or doorbell cams in the province of Ontario. Only police have access to the database of registrants. CamSafe only requests basic contact information and camera locations, nothing else. No account information or specifics required. You can change or delete your information at any time. Well, what about the contracts that the OPP have or any police force, right? For people that have not heard of Palantir, for instance, Palantir is a data mining security company that partners with militaries and police forces all around the world. So, no, I don't believe that anything is just in the hands of the police, and we should be looking into the ties that they have. And so, for example, if there's a break and enter to a home on a city street, the investigating officer can log into CamSafe and, much like Google Maps, geofence an area and see if there are anyone who has registered a camera in the area from that point. The officer, using the contact information provided, would request footage from the owner. So, in another future video, I'll definitely be talking about geofencing, just because this video is jam-loaded with information. I don't want to bombard anybody. But here is the article that talks about Mattawa and North Bay. So, major military exercise coming to Mattawa and North Bay. Mattawa will be home base for a major military exercise that will be held in that community and North Bay the weekend of May 3rd to 5th. Canadian Armed Forces will conduct an emergency response exercise with local government and partner agencies in the Mattawa and North Bay areas the weekend of May 3rd to 5th, 2024. Exercise Trillium Venture, as I said, being held in Ontario. It's led by Joint Task Force Central, as I mentioned, and I'll be going over that as well. It's headquartered in Toronto and includes members of the Canadian Armed Forces from the Canadian Army, Canadian Air Force, and the Royal Canadian Navy. Canadian Armed Forces members and assets will respond to simulated major flooding emergency and prepare a unified response with local, regional, and other partners in the community. Members of the public may see increased military vehicle, water, and air traffic, with military vehicles operating on area roads. No weapons or ammunition will be present during the exercise. So, and then this one includes soldiers from 33 Canadian Brigade Group, whereas in the Bruce and Huron counties it was 31 Canadian Brigade Group. So 33 CBG will form 33 Territorial Battalion Group, including soldiers from local areas in the region deploying to North Bay and Mattawa areas in a realistic emergency response scenario. Canadian Armed Forces assets from 22 Wing North Bay and the Naval Reserve will also participate in the joint exercises. Of course, Emergency Management Ontario, Police and Fire Services, and local governments. The Mike Rodden Arena at 450 Herdman Street, Mattawa, Ontario, will serve as the headquarters and house nearly 150 soldiers, while approximately 50 Canadian Armed Forces members will operate from Canadian Forces Base North Bay and the Martin Leo Troy Armory at 540 Chippewa Street West, North Bay, will be utilized for this exercise. Increased military vehicle traffic between these locations on Ontario Highway 17 and surrounding roads can be expected, and the Mike Rodden Arena and parking lot will be inaccessible during the exercise, as the location will serve as a base for military personnel, vehicles, and equipment. Public and media are invited to attend a Meet a Soldier event with our partners based at the museum at Explorers Point Park, 285 First Street, Mattawa, on May 4th, 2024, from 1 to 4 p.m. And the various military and other first responders vehicles and equipment will be on display, and personnel from the Canadian Armed Forces and participating organizations will be available to speak with the national defense public. So here are some photos, and this is Trillium Venture, their exercise photo. Recruiters will be on site to discuss the many employment opportunities available in the Canadian Armed Forces and to provide information on how to join part-time or full-time. This important training supports year-round preparation for emergencies in Canadian communities, including natural disasters, flooding, and wildfires, and so on and so forth. And so all Canadian Army Reserve vehicle operators train regularly. It says all measures will be taken to ensure minimum inconvenience, just, the basic stuff that they'll say. Canadian Armed Forces extremely grateful to the town of Mattawa, City of North Bay, and the North Bay/Jack Garland Airport Authority, other local partners, and the citizens of these communities for their hospitality and patience while we conduct this important emergency response exercise. Okay. So now to talk about 33 Canadian Brigade Group. So this is their Latin slogan, strong alone, stronger together. And of course, these are the various trades in the units, from armor officer, gunner, artillery officer, chaplain, combat engineer, so on and so forth. And so this is their list of equipment that they have. And of course, there are various team recruiters at the side there, and the vehicles that they have there as well. And so this just basically gives their schedule. People can read through this if they want. Links are always in the description of my videos. 33 Canadian Brigade Group is military formation that is made up of 16 Army Reserve Force units located throughout eastern Ontario in an area extending more than 1,000 kilometers from east to west and 700 kilometers from north to south. 16 reserve units are located in cities within the National Capital Region, but also as far as Oshawa, north in Timmins, east in Cornwall, and west in Sault Ste. Marie. 33 Canadian Brigade Group headquarters is currently located in the city of Ottawa and is part of 4th Canadian Division, which is headquartered in Toronto. And then these are the various units that are a part of this particular brigade. And so the command team, you have Colonel James McKay and Sergeant Major. You have Chief Warrant Officer James Newell. So now that people understand the personnel that are there, they can perhaps ask to speak to those who are actually in command of the regiment, brigade, battalion. Sorry for the lack of knowledge on military terms. Canadian Armed Forces hold training exercise in Huron County. And so this, of course, is just talking about Trillium Venture. I don't want to sound like a broken record repeating things, but this is just coming from the OPP personally here, so I thought I would include this one as well. They'll see the deployment of domestic response units and territorial battalion group sustainment equipment and vehicles to validate the ability to deploy and sustain in real time. And of course, you have the same type of scenario there: weather-related exercise, fire training, door-to-door, quote-unquote wellness check, search and rescue, and cooling center establishment. The whole 9 yards. And so this as well, it mentions this year amateur radio operators have been asked to participate as part of this exercise. During emergency events, emergency managers and potentially the military need to have real-time information from across the impacted area. This is referred to as ground truth. Amateur radio operators are ideal suited to provide field reports and to help pass traffic. This is an especially important activity in the first hours or days after an event. Decision makers can only decide how best to respond to the emergency if they have good current information. Changing weather patterns and the potential for attacks on critical infrastructure training exercises like this are vitally important. Responding to large-scale disasters or emergencies is not simple or easy, and so better training allows for a quicker, more efficient response. Trillium Venture Exercise 2024 in Bruce County needs to have amateur radio volunteers at 4 operational unit locations, including Lions Head, Wyerton, Midmay, and Port Elgin. And so, yeah, basically they're recruiting radio volunteers of sorts. So 31 Canadian Brigade Group, headquartered in London, and it stretches from Hamilton to Windsor. The brigade has about 2,400 soldiers. Colonel Chris Brown, CD, is commander of 31 Canadian Brigade Group. The brigade sergeant major is Chief Warrant Officer Mike Coit, so it says here. And as well, it was created in 1942, and of course, it was closed down in 1945, and the headquarters itself closed in 1946. And this is the following organization if people want to check that out themselves. And it was reformed in 1997. So, time to move forward once again. 31 Canadian Brigade Group. So, for hearth and home is their motto. And you have artillery officer, gunner, armored officer, combat engineer, infantry officer, infantry soldier, logistics, supply technician, etc. And this is the equipment that they have in this particular unit, and the vehicles that are used, and as well. So it's part of 4th Division and is headquartered in London, Ontario, and responsibilities reach from Hamilton to Windsor and north to Owen Sound and Barrie. And it has nearly 2,500 members who are part-time, and the vast majority are part-time reserve soldiers. And in recent years, the brigade has deployed hundreds of soldiers on overseas operations in Afghanistan and to other theaters, because all wars are really just theater, as a matter of fact. Haiti, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Eastern Europe. 31 CBG has also deployed a large number of soldiers on domestic operations, including flood control operations and providing soldiers to Operation Provision for the deployment for the support of Syrian refugees in 2015 and 2016, and they also do exercises in the Canadian Arctic. So, commanders here mentioned: Colonel Joe Robinson and Chief Warrant Officer is a Sergeant Major, Chief Warrant Officer Mark Delarospel. And so, in terms, now I'm going to move forward and talk a little bit about Joe Robinson here. So, Joe Robinson, part of the Canadian Armed Forces. Unfortunately, LinkedIn doesn't allow me to see everything that's listed here, but under his certificates and certificates of education here, GBA Plus stands for Introduction for Gender-Based Analysis, and then you have United Nations Humanitarian Civil Military Coordination course, which I'll be going over what that is, Ontario Principles Program, and I'm not sure if he has renewed his expired Ontario Certified Teacher thing here. So, and then as well, he's part of 4th Battalion, the Royal Canadian Regiment Council, and the Royal Canadian Regiment Museum. So, that essentially concludes that. Now I'm going to read a little bit about the United Nations Humanitarian Civil Military Coordination course. So, humanitarian organizations, state forces, and non-state armed groups increasingly operate in the same space in emergencies, whether they are caused by conflict, extreme weather events, or other human-made disasters. Effective dialogue between these entities is critical to obtain and maintain humanitarian access to people in need and ensure their protection. UN Civil Military Coordination formalizes this essential dialogue and interaction to protect and promote humanitarian principles, avoid competition, minimize inconsistency, and, when appropriate, pursue common goals. The interactions ranges The interaction ranges from coexistence to cooperation. Good coordination between humanitarian community and the military requires information sharing in a clear sense of the division of tasks. They can also help to reduce risk of misunderstandings or conflicts between military and civilian personnel and reduce humanitarian assistance and ensure, that humanitarian assistance is provided in a way that is coordinated and consistent with international human law. Okay, so it's basically about essentially the relationship between civilians and military, from what I understand here, and preparing for weather-related disasters, if you will. So, and then this is Mark Delaraspel, and of course, like I said, LinkedIn doesn't allow me to see everything, but he's got Order of the Member of Military Merit, I guess presented through the Governor General of Canada. Governor General of Canada is the federal representative for the monarchy, and then the lieutenant governors are different provincial representatives for the monarchy. And so, through NATO, award in Afghanistan, Canadian Forces Peacekeeper Medal from the Department of National Defense. He was in Kosovo and was working with NATO in August 2000. Same with Bosnia in June of 1998. In the Golan Heights on behalf of UNDOF, I'll explain what that is momentarily, and the Canadian Forces Decoration from the Department of National Defense. So, here is UNDOF. What it essentially is here is, let me just scroll down here, from March 1974, from early March 1974, the situation in the Israel-Syria sector became increasingly unstable and firing intensified. The UN Disengagement Observer Force was established on May 31st, 1974 by Security Council Resolution 350, following the agreed disengagement of the Israeli and Syrian forces in the Golan Heights. So here is 4th Canadian Division, which is one of the 5 major divisions that report to the Army headquarters in Ottawa. It's responsible to provide combat-ready land forces in accordance with assigned tasks, conduct general purpose training in preparation for various land operations, and provide support services to other organizations as directed or as mutually arranged. It includes all regular and reserve force units in Ontario, with the exception of a portion of northwestern Ontario, which falls under 3rd Canadian Division. And the mission of 4th Canadian Division is to generate, maintain at designated states of readiness, combat-ready, multi-purpose land forces to meet Canada's defense objectives, both at home and abroad, and its formation of units: 5,880 regular force members, 5,980 reserve force members, 620 Canadian Rangers, and 1,140 civilian employees, totaling 13,000 men and women. And the regular force units, with members working full-time, are most commonly found on bases and sites across the province. And the 2 largest concentrations are the 4th Canadian Division Support Base in Petawawa in the Ottawa Valley, and Canadian Forces Base in Kingston on the north shore of Lake Ontario. 4th Canadian Division headquarters is found at the Denizen Armory on the grounds of Downsview Park in North Toronto. So, the command team, you have Commander, which is the Brigadier General J.J. Major, that's Josh Major, and then Sergeant Major, you have Chief Warrant Officer Jeremy G. Lehman. So, these are the various units and formations here. I have it sorted by city, and again, people can go through this if they so desire themselves, but 31 Brigade Group and 33 Canadian Brigade Group are a part of it. So this is a little description about Josh Major here. He was born in North Bay, joined the 12th Regiment Blinded de Canada, sorry about my French pronunciation, as a troop leader in 1999. During his time there, he commanded at the troop and squadron level, as well as occupying several staff positions, including Regimental Operations Officer and Regimental Second in Command. January 23rd, 2014, he became a proud member of Lord Strathcona's Horse Royal Canadians and was appointed commanding officer in June 2014. I believe that is an armored unit, in particular a tank unit, and the only tank unit in Canada. He was deployed 4 times on operations, including Operation Palladium in 2002, Operation Athena in 2006 and 2009, and Operation Reassurance in 2017. And his extra-regimental assignments include serving as an instructor and standards officer at the RCAC School, Army Training Authority, Det Ottawa Section Head, and as Special Assistant to the Commanding General, United States Army Europe. His most recent assignments were at the First Commander of Task Force Latvia and Chief of Staff Army Operations. And he assumed command of 4th Canadian Division and Joint Task Force Central on July 5th, 2022. He holds a BA from Royal Military College of Canada and a master's degree of international relations from Webster University and a master's degree in military art and science from the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College. He is a graduate of the U.S. School of Advanced Military Studies as well as the Canadian Armed Forces National Security Program. So, and then apparently he likes to play hockey and has a very tolerant wife, supposedly. So, here it mentions that there are 6 standing regional joint task force headquarters. So you have North, Pacific, West, Central, East, and Atlantic, and Joint Task Force Central is what he is in command of, which is in the province of Ontario. So let's read a little bit about Joint Task Force Central. It's one of 6, like I said. Its headquarters is in Toronto, and the division is a formation of the Canadian Army. The Trenton Search and Rescue region falls under Commander 1st Canadian Air Division, and it's responsible for leading Canadian Armed Forces contingent operations in the province of Ontario. It includes territorial waterways, and Ontario is home to more than 13 million people. It is Canada's largest province in terms of population. It is the 2nd largest in terms of both land mass and waterways. And essentially, the commander directs the Canadian Armed Forces response anywhere in the AOR if help is requested, in the area of responsibility if help is requested. This applies to disaster relief, critical incidents, search and rescue operations. And a request for Canadian Armed Forces may come through or from Canadian Joint Operations Command, their partners in operations, and provincial and territorial governments. And the commander of Joint Task Force Central has the authority to form mission-appropriate forces, and as well, it includes any of the Canadian Armed Forces resources held in the province of Ontario by the Royal Canadian Navy, Canadian Army, and Royal Canadian Air Force. And it maintains full awareness of security and defense conditions in the province of Ontario and its territorial waterways. Its most recent contingency operation was Operation Lentis in 2015. And its task force supported the province of Ontario during this mission, and they've helped residents of the Kashechuan, excuse me for the pronunciation, who were affected by spring flooding, and the Royal Canadian Armed Forces Rotary Wing assets were placed on standby. They were prepositioned close to the flooded region. This was done to back up provincial air evacuation based on need. Canadian Rangers from the affected communities also helped with the volunteer evacuation. So now that I've read a little bit about that, just want to share a little bit of insight here, and thank you Canuck Law for this article here. I'm going to use the same article that she got information from here, which is where the military leaders saw the pandemic as a unique opportunity to test propaganda techniques on Canadian forces. And it was similar propaganda techniques that were employed during the Afghanistan war, if you will. So here you have essentially, this is the article I meant to grab. It mentions Lieutenant General Mike Rollo and how basically federal government never asked for the so-called Information Operations Campaign, nor did Cabinet authorize the initiative during this particular sham right here. I'm not going to use those words because I want to leave this video on YouTube, by the Canadian Joint Operations Command, which was led by Lieutenant General Mike Rollo. And so military commanders believed that they didn't need to get approval from higher authorities to develop and proceed with their plan. Retired Major General Daniel Gosselin, who was brought in to investigate the scheme, concluded this in his report. The propaganda plan was developed and put in place in April 2020, even though the Canadian forces had already acknowledged that the information, operations, and targeted policies and doctrines are aimed at adversaries and have a limited application in a domestic concept. Right. So, and in December 2nd, 2020, Gosselin investigation, as well as other related documents, was obtained by this newspaper using the Access to Information Law. And Canadian Joint Operations Command relied on propaganda techniques similar to those employed in the Afghanistan war. The campaign called for shaping and exploiting information, and they claimed the information operations scheme was needed to head off civil disobedience by Canadians during this sham, if you will, to bolster government messages about the sham. So I think I've said enough here, but first of all, what I just want to say here is that it's interesting because I'm going to be talking about 31 Canadian Brigade Group in this article. It's from September 2nd, 2020, and it mentions that candidates, if you will, were put into a course bubble meant to ensure public health and force health protection, FHP, and this included wearing masks where appropriate and possible, meticulous hand washing and sanitizing of spaces, and of course physical distancing measures. Good for you guys. Aren't you proud of yourself? Basic military qualification, Land 0378, began on August 13th, 2020 at Wolseley Barracks in London, a base with a long history of serving as a regional training hub and producing generations of Canadian soldiers. BMQL is the land component to basic training for all Army trades except infantry, where the basic standard in-ground warfare skills like operating machine guns, learning rudimentary offensive and defensive operations, and other tactical lessons must be met for all soldiers in the Canadian Army Reserve. Right. So, and utilizing local training establishments, an experienced cadre of instructors, new force health protection measures, and the sprawling training areas of 4th Canadian Division Training Center in Meaford, the brigade has been a recent success in running basic training in the quote-unquote new normal. We followed one such course from flash to bang during the reserve summer training period in August, once training had resumed following the long delay caused by you know what. So, all in all here, it just seems like this particular brigade, led by Colonel Joe Robinson, if you will, are afraid to question their superiors in regards to this particular sham, if you will, and this sham is really all just part of the biodigital convergence. And I would recommend you, Colonel Joe Robinson, to watch this, as well as the commander of Joint Task Force Central. I would recommend that Josh Major, you watch this as well yourself. I hope this gets wind to you, because you guys should be questioning exactly what you guys are ordered to do and not just blindly following along in service of so-called country, which actually is just a corporation registered in Washington, D.C. So, Are you for the people or are you for the corporation, soldiers? Sorry. Anyway, moving forward here, it just sounds very much like they're pretty much on board following orders with the public health measures, if you will, and some operations which I spoke about as I went down to Godrich with others, with Josephine Lavallee, and we ended up, Josephine Lavallee, we ended up going down to Godrich and speaking out about this. And so I had mentioned 2 different operations which involved following along with the scamdemic measures, if you will, for lack of better words. So here I just want to, the reason why I'm bringing up the quantum financial system now is a lot of people are trying to normalize the military presence and saying, like, you should be used to that, getting used to that, that kind of a thing. And this all comes from the people that support QAnon, you know, trust the plan, Donald Trump will save you, that kind of a thing. And so they advocate for this quantum financial system, but essentially the QFS quantum financial system is just another way of saying blockchain is what it is. And so it follows different protocols that come from this particular protocol, ISO 20022. And so what happens with this particular protocol, if you will, what is ISO 2022? Well, for one thing, the ISO, the International Standardization Organization, is one of many standardization organizations that regulate and put into practice and normalize things that revolve around the biodigital convergence that range from optogenetics to a task-based economy to smart farming and various other avenues. In this case, I'm just talking about the economy here. So it stands for electronic data interchange between financial services and the payment industry, and it uses distributed ledger technology. So it's a single standardization approach to be used by financial standards initiatives, and it's set to officially begin in November 2022 and to be implemented in November 2025. Protocol is a standard for electronic data interchange between financial services in the payment industry. And so essentially worldwide banks committed to this regulatory framework back SWIFT and the Federal Reserve and wants to move toward this new quantum financial system. And any third party that wants to interact with banks must be able to use this ISO 20022 format. Okay, so basically it's offering us no choice, saying that we have to operate through this particular protocol if we want to have services from banks, right? And so this is the particular technical committee that is working on this protocol, right? And so this particular committee, if you will, this technical committee, is led by Mademoiselle Eileen Kipp, and AFNOR is the Association Française de Normalisation. So what happens is, being that ISO, international, is right in its name, you have various national standardization organizations that work within this sort of field, and other standardization organizations to watch out for beside the ISO are also the IEC, the International Electrotechnical Commission, and the IEEE, whose acronym name escapes me at the moment. So this woman, Eileen Kipp, we're going to go over her resume. And so project manager in standardization. And so she has a background in copyright law, data analysis, and as well she is educated in contract law and real estate law. And so as well she is involved in deep tech from cryptoactives, blockchain, robotics, and AI. And blockchain is literally the platform for digital ID, and also the platform for, essentially, being that it is a ledger system, this is exactly what they're trying to do with the internet, is entirely make it Web3 based, which means blockchain. So Thanks, Bantam Joe, for these articles here. I don't really like the term 15-minute city. It's just a piece of slang is what it is. I use the term smart city. But anyway, and a smart city is a gateway to the metaverse, essentially. So he's saying that most young people will think the metaverse looks something like this, where you kind of like become your own virtual superhero using the digital twin. But in reality, that's kind of exactly what it'll look like there. And so the Web3 metaverse, as it is being developed, will be tied to a new global economic system based on carbon credits and social credits, hacked minds, and hijacked natural processes. It will consist of virtual assets, virtual money, virtual jobs, virtual friends, virtual travel, virtual entertainment, virtual intimacy, and virtual imaginative creations. For the good of the planet, all physical travel and ownership of goods, including cars, will be restricted to the point of non-existence, except for the super wealthy. The majority of the world's population will be forced into these geo-fenced homes at their local metaverse networks. So I already mentioned geofencing to you earlier, and I will dive into that in a later video at some point, or leave links in the description to talk about that a little bit. But the ruling mafia class at the UN, WEF, WHO, Bank of International Settlements, or IMF, along with the royal families, are in the midst of creating a new world order with a smaller manageable population using technology to monitor and control the masses, with the end goal of merging biological processes into the digital domains. These self-appointed guardians of the universe are rewriting the code of life at will and dictating their will upon every inhabitant of this planet without our consent or debate. If left unopposed, it most certainly will result in the destruction of humanity as we know it, along with the rest of natural life on Earth. And to 31 Canadian Brigade Group, 33 Canadian Brigade Group, and the whole rest of 4th Division, for all I care, do you want your jobs replaced by a virtual twin or by some kind of cybernetic robot that you're controlling while you're wearing the VR goggles? I don't think so. So if this is the kind of future that you don't want, you're going to take a stand with the people. We're dealing with eugenicists and transhumanists who believe that directed evolution is their right, their responsibility, and their duty, that they have been divinely appointed to be engineers of such a future, and in the process, they will be enriching themselves, taking away our property and resources. These people are not kidding when stating in movies that the resistance will be futile and that we will all be assimilated. We literally are dealing with psychopathic criminals. So I kind of don't really like the fear porny aspects of this article, if you will, but I'm just trying to make a point here that these are the kinds of goals that these psychopathic criminals, as Bantam Joe says, they want us to live in a technocratic dystopian future, if you will. And it mentions here that cash will be replaced by CBDCs. I would actually say more like a token-based economy, if you will, which I'll be getting at explaining. Your identity is globally recognized blockchain NFT avatar that represents your digital twin. NFT is like a digital picture that holds data on the blockchain. Cameras and other forms of surveillance devices permeate the physical world, including those under your skin. Gas combustion vehicles have been outlawed, and people are left being dependent upon dystopian services. Travel outside the city limits is restricted to only essential workers, VIP, members of government, and corporations. Power to homes, businesses, and municipal structures are routinely cut off in order to meet net zero thresholds and benchmarks. So here essentially you have, once again, the blockchain as the platform for this, and this article I'll be leaving in the description here just because it's way too long to go through. But the point that I am really getting at here is that using this article here, human DNA as new digital wallets. So imagine if you're looking at basically the kind of, look at NFTs, like I said, it's like a picture on the blockchain. So imagine that picture being a DNA strand if you combine that with CRISPR-based technology, which is DNA altering technology, and you have tokens loaded onto this DNA strand based off of limited tasks available that we're all competing for like a bunch of task rabbits. That is not a society I want to live in. And you can find documents on the Policy Horizons website. Policy Horizons is led by this woman here, Crystal Vander Elst, who is also the CEO of the Global Foresight Group. And the Global Foresight Group works with the World Health Organization, the United Nations, and others. She is a special advisor to the European Commission, Vice President Marko Sefcovic, and a fellow at the Center for Strategic Foresight of the U.S. Government Accountability Office. She was also former head of strategic foresight of the World Economic Forum, and as well, she is a honorary Rotarian, if you will, part of the Rotary Club. So now to discuss solutions very briefly before I close this video here. What I do want to say is that this is a great website that has been designed by Love Billy, and so it dumbs down the biodigital convergence agenda, talks about smart cities and the blockchain and different aspects of the technology and how it works and the plans of these technocratic, totalitarian, loving individuals. And there's contact information left down here for various people here from James Scott, and thank you, James, for the information that you have provided to people, Brian Mitchell, and Julianne Romanello. And James even leaves his contact information, has a PDF flyer for you to print off so that you can leave them for different individuals, and also start that ethics committee that he is speaking about, where we get the smart infrastructure removed. So thanks for watching, everybody, and if people have questions, they can find me on Facebook at Matt Unseated or go into the comments. And one thing I just want to show people here is this was the poster that was used for the Godrich rally, which Josephine and I hosted, and we will be back during the time of the military exercises, and we also want people to be empowered, not scared, but also forming relationships with their neighbors, say where one is good with carpentry and framing, and then somebody is great at, say, making jam or something like that, and they trade with each other, because this kind of dystopian future is not one I want to live in, and I don't think anybody wants to. And that includes you guys in the Canadian military and you guys and girls in the Ontario Provincial Police. So please distribute this to everybody, and thanks for watching.